Midnight. A place grown men avoid after dark. Engines cooling. Silence watching. Then a knock. Not loud. Not brave. Desperate. A bruised teenager stands outside. A little girl hiding behind him. He doesn't ask for money. He doesn't ask for protection. He asks one question that changes everything. Can you hide my sister for one night? They say yes. That was the mistake. Because by morning, someone powerful would come looking, and this door would decide who loses control. So what happens when ordinary people refuse to look away? Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. Now back to the story. Midnight doesn't arrive gently in places like this. It slams down. The biker clubhouse sits at the far edge of town, where streetlights thin out and sound travels too far. A low concrete building with peeling paint and a single buzzing security light above the door. No sign. No welcome mat. Just a rusted iron lantern bolted to the wall, its glass cracked but still glowing. Engines have only just gone quiet. Metal ticks as it cools. Oil drips into shallow pans. A radio murmurs somewhere in the back, too low to make out the song, just enough to remind anyone listening that silence here is never empty. Inside, the air is thick with grease and heat and old stories that don't need telling anymore. Men move slowly now, unhurried, the way people do when they know they own the space they're standing in. Hands stained dark from years of work. Eyes sharp even at rest. This is not a place people wander into by accident. Most folks in town cross the street when they pass it. Some won't even drive by after dark. Rumors cling to the building like cigarette smoke, some earned, most exaggerated, all enough to keep strangers away. Which is why the knock doesn't make sense. At first, no one reacts. It's too soft. Too unsure. A sound like knuckles brushing wood instead of striking it. One of the men looks up, frowns. Another stills, a wrench frozen mid-turn. The radio crackles. Somewhere, a chair scrapes lightly against concrete. The knock comes again. Not louder, just persistent. That's when instinct kicks in. Every man in the room feels it at the same time, that tightening in the chest, that old reflex that doesn't ask questions. Hands drift closer to pockets. Postures shift. Eyes move to the door, then to each other. No one knocks like that unless they're either desperate or trying not to be noticed. The engines outside have all cooled now. The ticking stops. Silence settles in heavy and deliberate, like the building itself is holding its breath. One of the men wipes his hands on a rag that's seen better decades and starts toward the door. His steps are slow, measured. He doesn't reach for the handle right away. He leans in, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just the faint hum of the security light outside and the distant sound of a truck passing somewhere far off on the highway. He cracks the door open just enough to see into the alley. That's when he sees the kid. A teenage boy stands there, barely illuminated by the harsh, white light above him. He's too thin for the oversized hoodie hanging off his shoulders. One sleeve is torn, fabric stretched and frayed like it caught on something sharp and lost the fight. There's a dark bruise blooming along his jaw, still fresh, still angry. His hands are shaking. Not the jittery shake of nerves alone, but exhaustion layered on top of fear, stacked so thick it's a wonder he's still standing. Behind him, half hidden in the shadow of the alley, is a little girl. She can't be more than 10. She's holding a comic book to her chest with both arms, hugging it tight like it might disappear if she lets go. The cover is bent, the edges curled. Her jacket is too light for the night air, zipped all the way up even though the temperature's dropping fast. One sock is pulled higher than the other. Her hair hasn't been brushed in days. Her eyes are wide. Not curious. Watching. The kind of watching kids learn when they grow up too fast, tracking movements, reading faces, waiting for the moment when things go wrong. The man at the door doesn't open it any wider. "You lost?" he asks. His voice is calm, but there's weight behind it. The kind of voice that's ended bad ideas before they had time to grow. The boy swallows. "No," he says. His voice cracks anyway. He clears his throat, squares his shoulders like he's bracing against something invisible. I don't need anything, he says quickly. Too quickly. I mean, I'm not asking for me. The man's eyes flick, just once, to the girl behind him. The boy notices. His grip tightens on her shoulder, protective, automatic. The movement is practiced. He's done this before. She does, the boy says. Softer now. Almost pleading. She needs help. The alley feels colder suddenly. The man studies them in silence. Years of experience run behind his eyes, evaluating, measuring risk, reading what isn't being said. He's seen scams. He's seen setups. He's seen people use kids as shields before. But he's also seen real fear. This looks like the second kind. What kind of help, he asks. The boy hesitates. For a moment it looks like he might bolt. Like whatever chased him here is still close enough to feel on the back of his neck. His eyes keep darting over the man's shoulder, into the building beyond, then back to the street behind them. He licks his lips. One night, he says. The words come out fast, tumbling over each other. Just one night. That's all. Somewhere safe. She can sleep. I'll stay outside. I don't need to come in. I swear. I just need to know she's okay until morning. The man doesn't respond right away. Inside the clubhouse, the others have gone quiet. Every ear is tuned to the doorway now. No one speaks. No one moves. The boy's breathing is shallow. The girl shifts slightly, pressing closer to him. Her comic book creaks softly under her grip. What's your name? The man asks. The boy flinches at the question like it might be a trap. Pete, he says after a beat. And hers? The boy glances down at the girl. She looks up at him, searching his face. He nods once. Victoria, she whispers. Her voice is so small it almost disappears into the night. The man exhales slowly. He looks at the bruise on Pete's face again. The torn sleeve. The way the kid's shoulders are hunched forward, like he's expecting a blow that hasn't come yet. He looks at Victoria's mismatched socks. The way her eyes keep flicking to the street, then back to Pete, then to the open door. This isn't rehearsed. This is survival. Still, instinct fights instinct. Letting strangers in, especially at midnight, has consequences. So does turning them away. What happened? The man asks. Pete's jaw tightens. He shakes his head. I can't. He stops himself, swallows hard. I don't have time to explain. Please. One night. The word please lands heavy. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's worn thin. The man glances over his shoulder, back into the clubhouse. One of the others meets his gaze and gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not agreement. Permission to decide. The door opens a little wider. Get inside, the man says. Pete freezes. I said just her, he blurts out. I don't want any trouble. I didn't say you were trouble. The man cuts in firmer now. I said get inside. There's no anger in his voice, but there's no room to argue either. Pete hesitates, then guides Victoria forward. She steps past the threshold carefully, like she expects it to bite. Pete follows, eyes darting everywhere at once, cataloging faces, exits, distances. The door closes behind them with a heavy click. The sound echoes louder than it should. For a moment, no one speaks. Victoria looks around the garage, her eyes huge. Motorcycles line the walls like sleeping animals. Tools hang in neat rows. The smell of oil and metal fills her nose. It's intimidating and somehow comforting at the same time. Pete stands rigid, every muscle coiled tight. This is just for one night, he says quickly, like he needs to say out loud to make it real. We'll be gone in the morning. No one answers him. Not yet. Because somewhere deep down, every person in that room already knows something Pete doesn't want to admit. People don't knock on doors like this unless they're running out of time. And whatever scared them enough to come here might still be looking. If you believe a child asking for safety should never be ignored, hit subscribe. People who protect kids stand together. The door is closed now. Thick. Metal. Final. For the first time since they stepped inside, the noise of the outside world is gone. No wind down the alley. No passing tires on cracked asphalt. Just the steady hum of fluorescent lights and the faint ticking of cooling engines, like a countdown that hasn't decided when it will end. Victoria doesn't let go of the comic book right away. She stands just inside the doorway, eyes darting from wall to wall, bike to bike, face to face. Every sound makes her shoulders jump. A wrench set down too hard. A cough from the back of the garage. The scrape of boots on concrete. Pete notices everything. He notices how she positions herself slightly behind him, always keeping him between her and the room. He notices how her fingers curl tighter around the edges of the comic whenever someone shifts their weight. He notices how she never looks directly at anyone for more than a second. This isn't shyness. This is training. Someone taught her, without meaning to, that attention is dangerous. A folding cot is dragged out from storage, its legs squealing softly in protest as it's open near the far wall, away from the open bay doors. A blanket follows. Not new, not pretty, but clean.
Warm.
Sit, one of the bikers says gently, nodding toward it. Victoria looks up at Pete. She doesn't move until he nods back. Only then does she climb onto the cot, tucking her legs under herself, comic book still clutched to her chest. The blanket is pulled up around her shoulders, swallowed by its size. Someone hands her a mug, chocolate milk, warmed on a hot plate usually reserved for bad coffee. She cups it with both hands, sighing without realizing it as the heat seeps into her fingers.
Pete stays standing.
He positions himself between her and the rest of the room, feet planted, back straight. His eyes never stop moving.
Door.
Window. Shadows. Corners. He doesn't sit. He doesn't relax. He watches. One of the bikers studies him quietly, the way people do when they recognize something familiar. Not fear exactly, but responsibility that's been carried too long. "When's the last time you slept?" the man asks. Pete shrugs without looking at him. "I'm fine." That's not an answer. Silence stretches. Pete's jaw tightens. Couple days. No one reacts outwardly, but something shifts in the room. The air grows heavier, like everyone just accepted an unspoken truth. Victoria sips her drink slowly. Her eyelids flutter. The warmth works its way through her, loosening knots she didn't know how to untie. The comic slips slightly in her hands, tilting open to a page she's already read too many times. Pete notices immediately and reaches down, steadying it. She gives him a small smile. It's tired, but real. Minutes pass. Then more. The garage settles into a rhythm. Tools cleaned and put away. Lights dimmed slightly. Conversations kept low. The men move with deliberate care now, like they're sharing a space with something fragile that might shatter if startled. Victoria's head begins to dip.
Once. Twice.
She startles awake each time, eyes wide, scanning the room as if she's afraid sleep itself might be a mistake. "It's okay," Pete whispers, barely audible. "I'm right here." Her grip loosens. The comic slips from her hands and lands softly against her chest. Her breathing evens out. She sleeps.
Deep. Heavy.
The kind of sleep that comes only when exhaustion finally wins. Pete doesn't move. He pulls a stool closer to the cot and sits, elbows on his knees, leaning forward just enough to be within reach. One hand hovers near the edge of the blanket, not touching, just close enough to react. He watches her chest rise and fall, counts the breaths. Across the garage, the bikers exchange looks. None of them comment on the way Pete positions himself. None of them mention that he hasn't blinked in far too long. An hour passes. Then another. The clock on the wall ticks louder than it should. Pete's shoulders sag slightly, fatigue creeping in despite his effort to fight it. His eyes burn. His head dips, jerks back up. "No," he mutters to himself. "Not now." A shadow shifts near the door. Pete stiffens instantly. His heart slams into his ribs. His eyes snap up, locking onto the movement. Muscles coil, ready to spring. It's nothing. Just one of the bikers doing a perimeter check, making sure locks are secure, windows latched, the outside light still on. But Pete's breathing doesn't slow. Because to him, Nothing has never meant safe. Someone places a hand on his shoulder. He flinches hard, spinning slightly before he can stop himself. Easy, the man says calmly. It's just me. Pete swallows, nods once. Doesn't apologize. You need to sleep, the man says quietly. I can't. You won't do her any good if you collapse. I said I'm fine. The man studies him for a long moment. Then, I'll take watch. Pete hesitates. This is the hardest part. Not running. Not hiding. Letting go. For 2 hours, the man adds. You sleep. I stand here. You wake up, we switch. Deal. Pete searches his face, looking for the catch, the lie, the moment when this turns bad. He doesn't find it. Okay, he whispers. He slides down from the stool and lowers himself to the concrete floor beside the cot, back against the wall. He stays close. Too close for comfort. Close enough that if she moves, he'll know. Within minutes, exhaustion drags him under. His breathing deepens. The garage doesn't sleep. Someone always stays awake. Time crawls. At some point past 3 in the morning, the dread settles in, not sharp, not loud, but heavy and unavoidable. Because the longer the night lasts, the clearer something becomes. This wasn't a random escape. This was calculated. Pete didn't just run when things got bad. He waited. He chose the time when the streets would be emptiest, when doors would be locked, when most people wouldn't answer. He came here because he knew who would. And that means the danger didn't end at the threshold. It's still out there, waiting for morning. When Pete wakes, it's with a jolt. His hand flies out instinctively, touching the cot, the blanket, the edge of Victoria's shoe. She's still there.
Still asleep.
Sunlight hasn't reached the high windows yet, but the dark has softened, thinning at the edges. Morning is coming. Relief washes through him. Then dread follows close behind. Because morning means movement. Questions. Exposure. It means the world waking up. And the world hasn't been kind so far. Victoria stirs, rubbing her eyes. She looks around, confused for a second, then spots Pete. You didn't leave, she whispers. No, he says immediately. I'm here. She nods, curls slightly toward him, and closes her eyes again. Pete looks up. The biker on watch meets his gaze and gives a small nod. The message is clear. You're not alone tonight. But the unspoken part hangs heavier. Tonight isn't forever. As the first real light slips through the dusty windows, quiet details begin to surface. Things that were hidden in the dark but can't stay buried once seen clearly. When Victoria stretches, her sleeve rides up. Just enough. Pete notices first. Always. Faint discoloration along her upper arm. Yellowing bruises. Old but not gone. A darker mark near her shoulder blade, newer. She pulls the sleeve back down quickly. Too quickly. Like she knows she wasn't supposed to forget. One of the bikers notices too. He doesn't say anything. Just files it away, jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Later, when Victoria goes to the bathroom, Pete paces the floor outside the door. He doesn't sit. He doesn't lean. He listens. When she comes back out, she keeps her arms close to her body. Protective. Instinctive. Someone offers breakfast. Something simple. She eats carefully, quietly, like she's afraid to take too much. She keeps glancing at Pete, checking his face before every bite. Is this okay? Her eyes seem to ask. Pete nods every time. Conversation stays light on the surface, but cracks appear. Questions asked gently. Answers given halfway. Where's your mom? Someone asks carefully. Pete's shoulders stiffen. She's gone. How long? A while. Anyone else at home? Pete doesn't answer right away. Victoria's fingers tighten around her mug. No, he says finally. It's not the truth. But it's close enough to hurt. Rules slip out next. Rules that don't fit a child's world. Rules about noise.
About food.
About standing still. About not touching things that belong to someone else. Rules enforced not with words, but consequences. The bikers don't interrupt. Don't react. But the mood in the room changes. This isn't about a bad night. This is about a pattern. Pete finally says the thing he's been avoiding. We didn't run, he admits quietly. We waited. Waited for what? Someone asks. For it to get worse, Pete says. So, I know I wasn't imagining it. The silence that follows is thick and bitter. Because everyone there knows what that means. It means he stayed too long. It means the line was crossed before he moved. It means mourning isn't relief. Mourning is risk. Because daylight brings visibility. And visibility brings consequences. Some good. Some very bad. The truth settles in slowly, but when it does, it's undeniable. This wasn't about finding somewhere to hide. It was about buying time. Time for someone to notice. Time for someone to believe them. Time for someone else to carry the weight before it crushed them completely. The bikers exchange looks. Mourning doesn't mean safety. It means decisions. And decisions always have a cost. Comment, protect the innocent if you think silence helps abusers, not victims. They don't say his name. Not at first. Not because they don't know it, but because names give shape to things, and right now, the shape is already too big. Inside the garage, the night has shifted. It's no longer just about keeping the door closed. It's about what happens if it opens again. The man they're hiding from exists in absence. He's the empty space in every sentence. The pause before every answer. The reason Victoria flinches when metal clinks too sharply against concrete. He doesn't need a face to be felt. He's rules. Rules that don't make sense to children. Rules that change depending on mood. Rules enforced not with explanation, but with consequences no one else sees. He's fear. Fear that teaches you to listen for footsteps. Fear that makes you memorize the sound of keys. Fear that tells a child silence is safer than truth. And he's what happens when systems look the other way. Bills paid. Roof overhead. No questions asked. The kind of authority that doesn't need paperwork to be dangerous. The bikers feel it settling in, heavy and unwelcome. This isn't a lost kid anymore. This isn't a bad night. This is a threat that hasn't arrived yet. No one raises their voice. No one slams a fist on the table. Because rage would be easy. Preparation is harder. A lock clicks into place on the side door.
New.
Solid. The sound is clean and final, like punctuation at the end of a sentence that shouldn't continue. Another lock follows. Then another. Windows are checked. Then checked again. Someone steps outside and scans the alley, eyes tracking shadows, listening not for noise, but for patterns that don't belong.
Phones come out.
Quiet calls. Low voices. Names exchanged without explanation. Not favors. Just information. Pete watches from near the cot, arms folded tight across his chest. He doesn't ask what they're doing. He already knows. They're not asking if the man will notice. They're asking when. Victoria sits cross-legged on the cot, flipping through her comic, but she isn't reading. She's pretending. Pete recognizes the act immediately. He used to do the same thing. Her eyes flick up every few seconds. To the door. To the windows. To the men moving through the garage with careful purpose. She notices the locks. Why are they doing that? She asks softly. Pete hesitates. Because how do you explain danger without making it bigger? They're just being careful, he says. She nods, but the answer doesn't settle. Careful usually comes after something bad happens. She's learned that already. The bikers don't announce what they're doing, but the energy in the room is changed. Movements are deliberate now. No wasted motion. No casual laughter. Even their silence has weight. One of them warms up an engine briefly, just enough to hear it respond. The sound rolls through the garage like distant thunder. Pete stiffens. He knows that sound. It's not aggression. It's readiness. Someone kneels near Victoria's cot and speaks gently, asking about school. About her favorite subject. About the comic she's holding. She answers in short sentences. Polite. Guarded. When asked what she likes to do at home, she shrugs. Stay out of the way, she says. The words land hard. No one reacts outwardly. But inside, something snaps into place. This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't discipline gone wrong. This is control. And control doesn't like to be challenged. Pete finally says the thing he's been holding back. He thinks she'll be back by morning. The room stills. He always expects things to go back to normal, Pete continues. Like nothing happened. Like we're just supposed to forget. Does he come looking when things don't go his way? Someone asks. Pete nods.
Once.
He doesn't yell at first, Pete says quietly. He waits, acts calm, says we're being dramatic. Victoria's fingers tighten on the comic. Pete notices and stops talking. But it's already enough. Because now the villain has a shape, not a face but a pattern. Someone who believes ownership equals authority. Someone who mistakes silence for consent. Someone who expects compliance to be inevitable. The bikers exchange glances. They don't speak the conclusion out loud.
But it's there.
If he realizes the girl isn't coming back, he won't accept it quietly. Preparation intensifies. A light over the garage door is replaced with a brighter one. Someone adjusts the angle so there are no blind spots in the alley. Another checks the cameras, old but functional. Pete watches it all with a knot in his stomach. Because with every lock added, every call made, the truth becomes clearer. This isn't just protection. It's escalation. Someone is drawing a line.
Victoria senses it too.
Children always do. She slides off the cot and walks over to Pete, slipping her hand into his without asking. Her grip is tight. Are we in trouble? She whispers. Pete kneels so they're eye level. No, he says immediately. You're safe. She studies his face. Is he mad? Pete doesn't answer right away. I don't know, he says honestly. She nods slowly. That's enough to tell her everything. Fear doesn't need details to grow. Across the room, one of the bikers speaks quietly. If he shows up, he says, not looking at Pete, he won't get past the door. Pete's heart pounds. He doesn't want violence. He never wanted that. He just wanted one night. Just enough time to think. But time has consequences. And power doesn't like to lose what it thinks belongs to it. The night deepens. Outside, the town sleeps. Lights go out one by one. Curtains drawn. Doors locked. Somewhere out there, a man notices the house is quieter than it should be. No footsteps. No voice. No child in the next room. He checks the clock. Morning is coming. And he expects things to return to order. Inside the garage, no one sleeps. They don't pace. They don't panic. They wait. Because this is no longer about shelter. It's about refusal. Refusing to hand a child back to fear. Refusing to pretend this is normal. Refusing to let authority go unquestioned just because it wears a convincing mask. The villain doesn't need a face to be dangerous. His power has already done damage. But power only works as long as people look away. And, tonight, no one is looking away. If you're sick of people who hurt kids and hide behind authority, tap like. Let them know the world is watching. Morning doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives with weight. The light that filters through the high garage windows is thin and colorless, slicing the dark into pale rectangles on the concrete floor. Dust floats through the beams, slow and quiet, like the world itself is hesitant to move too fast. This is the hour when things are decided. Pete feels it before anyone says a word. His stomach tightens the moment he hears the unfamiliar car pull up outside. Tires crunch against gravel. An engine shuts off. Doors open and close, not hurried, not aggressive. Just official. Victoria sits on the cot, feet tucked beneath her, hands folded in her lap. She's awake already. She's been awake for a while. She doesn't ask questions. She just watches. Pete stands when the knock comes. This one is firm. Measured. Nothing like the desperate tapping he made hours earlier. This knock doesn't ask for permission. It expects an answer. One of the bikers opens the door. Two people stand outside. Not uniforms. Not weapons.
Clipboards. Bags.
Calm expressions practiced through years of difficult mornings. Authorities. The word alone makes Pete's chest tighten. He's been here before. Rooms with neutral walls, voices that sound kind but carry power, questions that feel like traps no matter how honestly you answer. The woman introduces herself first.
Clear voice.
Steady eye contact. She doesn't scan the garage with suspicion. She takes it in piece by piece, as if cataloging reality instead of judging it. The man beside her nods politely. "We need to ask a few questions," the woman says. "It shouldn't take long." Pete hears what she doesn't say. It could change everything. Victoria's fingers curl tighter into her palms. Pete steps slightly in front of her without thinking. The bikers don't block the doorway. They don't posture. They step aside. This is the moment. They could walk away right now. No law requires them to stay involved. No contract binds them to what happens next. They offered a night of shelter. They delivered. Anything beyond this is choice. Risk. Responsibility. Pete watches their faces, waiting for the shift. The moment when self-preservation wins. It doesn't come. Instead, chairs are pulled up. Coffee is poured. A quiet space is cleared near the office. "Let's sit," one of the bikers says. The woman nods, surprised but relieved. Truth doesn't come out all at once. It never does. It comes in fragments. Dates that don't quite line up. Rules that sound unreasonable when spoken aloud. Moments Pete didn't realize mattered until someone writes them down carefully, without interruption. The woman listens more than she speaks. She asks Victoria gentle questions, crouching to her level, never forcing eye contact. Victoria answers softly, choosing words like they might get her in trouble if she picks the wrong ones. "What happens when rules are broken?" the woman asks. Victoria looks at Pete. Pete nods. She shrugs. "You don't break them again." The woman writes that down. Pete notices everything she writes. He notices what she doesn't react to, too. No gasps. No shocked expressions. No promises she can't keep. Just ink on paper.
Permanent.
Pete's hands tremble as he talks. He doesn't dramatize. He doesn't accuse. He just tells it straight. Because he knows now, this isn't about convincing anyone. It's about record. Victoria sits quietly while adults speak about her life, like it's a fragile object on the table between them. She swings her feet slightly, not touching the floor, eyes moving from face to face. She's learned how decisions happen without her. The woman turns to the bikers. "Why did you let them stay?" she asks. There it is. The line they could step back from. One answer could end their involvement cleanly. They could say it was just for the night. They could say we didn't know. They could say we were trying to help, but... Instead, one of them says, because a kid asked for help. No speeches. No justification. Just truth. The woman nods slowly. She looks around the garage again. At the locks, the cameras, the makeshift cot turned careful refuge. "You understand this makes you part of this now," she says. "There will be oversight. Visits. Paperwork. Liability." Silence follows. Pete's heart pounds. This is where people usually pull away. Where kindness reaches its limit. No one rushes to answer. Then another biker speaks. "We understand. That's it. The point of no return." The woman exhales softly, like she's been holding her breath longer than she realized. "Okay," she says. "Then we do this properly." Paperwork comes out. Forms that smell faintly of toner and consequence. Names are written. Addresses recorded. Statements signed. Pete watches his own handwriting shake across the page and wonders if this is the moment everything falls apart. Victoria leans against his side, small and quiet, listening to the scratch of pens deciding her future. The woman explains the process. Temporary placement. Follow-ups. Investigations. Pete hears the words, but not the meaning. All he hears is temporary. Temporary has always meant not safe. He looks up sharply. "She won't go back," he says. The woman meets his eyes. "No," she says gently. "She won't." The relief hits him so hard his knees almost give. Victoria doesn't react right away. She waits. She's learned not to believe words until they're proven. The bikers sign next. Each signature is deliberate. They know what this means. Inspections. Questions. Eyes that don't always understand their world. They accept it anyway, because walking away would be easier. And easier isn't always right. The villain never appears. There's no shouting match, no dramatic arrest, no moment of triumph, just paperwork, just truth written carefully where it can't be erased. That's how power really shifts, not with fists, with light. Light that forces things into focus. Light that makes excuses shrink. Light that turns whispers into records. Pete realizes something then. The man they were afraid of only had power in the dark. In silence. In isolation. In the spaces where no one was looking. Now people are looking. Victoria finally speaks. "Does this mean I can stay?" she asks. The woman smiles at her.
Yes.
"For now." Victoria nods, absorbing the words slowly, like they're fragile. Pete wraps an arm around her. The bikers stand nearby, quiet, steady. They didn't come looking to be heroes. They just refuse to look away. And once light hits monsters, they shrink or disappear. Share the story if you believe real strength is protecting those who can't fight back. The night ends quietly, not with sirens, not with shouting, not with a dramatic turning point you can point to and say, "There, right there, that's when everything changed." It ends the way most real nights do. Slowly, almost reluctantly. The sky lightens behind the high windows, gray giving way to pale blue. The harsh edge of darkness dulls, retreating inch by inch. Inside the garage, the air feels different, not lighter, exactly, but steadier. Like the ground has stopped shifting underfoot. Fear doesn't disappear with the sunrise. It lingers. It always does. Pete notices it first. He wakes before anyone else, the old habit still wired deep in his body. For a split second, his heart races. Where is she? Before his eyes adjust and he sees Victoria curled on the couch, a blanket tucked around her shoulders. She's still here, breathing slow, even. He exhales, a sound he didn't realize he'd been holding back. Fear doesn't vanish, but it loosens its grip. Just a little. The door remains locked. Not barricaded. Not jammed. Just secure. Locked because it should be. For the right reasons. Pete sits there for a while, watching the room wake up around him. The small details feel louder now. The hum of the fridge. The clink of a mug set down carefully. The low murmur of voices that don't carry tension anymore, just routine. No one rushes him. No one tells him to move. That alone feels unfamiliar. Victoria wakes slowly. Not with a start. Not with a sharp inhale or a frantic search for exits. She stretches. It's a small thing. Ordinary. The kind of thing kids do, without thinking when their bodies finally believe it's safe enough to relax. She blinks, looks around, then spots Pete. Her face brightens. "You're still here," she says. Pete smiles. A real one. It feels strange on his face, like a muscle he hasn't used in a long time. "Yeah," he says. "I'm not going anywhere." She nods, accepting this not as a promise, but as a fact. The bikers move through the space like they always have, but there's a softness now. Coffee is made. Breakfast appears without comment. Someone asks Victoria what she wants, not what she's allowed to have. She hesitates at first. Choice takes practice. "Toast," she says finally. Toast appears. She eats it carefully, then faster, then with growing confidence when no one tells her to slow down or stop. Crumbs scatter across the table. No one scolds her. Pete watches, chest tight. Fear doesn't vanish instantly, but something else replaces it, piece by piece.
Trust.
Later, when the garage quiets again, Pete finally does something he hasn't done in years. He sleeps. Not the half-sleep he's perfected, one ear open, muscles tense, mind alert for danger, but real sleep. The kind that drags him under whether he wants it to or not. He doesn't listen for footsteps. He doesn't count seconds between sounds. He doesn't wake at every shift of air. He dreams. When he wakes, hours have passed. Victoria is laughing. The sound hits him like a wave. It's not loud, not wild, but it's free. She's sitting on the floor with a deck of cards, losing badly and loving every second of it. She keeps dropping them, giggling when they scatter everywhere. Someone patiently shows her how to shuffle again, even though she keeps forgetting. Pete sits up slowly, stunned. He can't remember the last time he heard her laugh like that. Unfiltered, unrestrained, unafraid of being noticed. The bikers don't comment on it. They don't need to. They understand the weight of that sound. Fear doesn't vanish, but it retreats when it isn't fed. Days pass. Not in a montage. Not in neat chapters. In small adjustments. Locks stay on the doors. But no one jumps when they click. Phones ring. But not with threats. People stop by, officials, helpers, observers. They look around. They ask questions. They make notes. Pete tenses every time. Victoria stays close at first, watching carefully, measuring reactions. And every time, the adults leave without taking her away. Every time, they come back smiling a little more. Fear doesn't vanish, but it learns it's no longer in charge. Victoria starts sleeping through the night. Pete notices because he wakes up before she does now. He listens out of habit, then realizes there's nothing to listen for. No shouting. No footsteps pacing. No sudden silence that means something's wrong. The door stays locked. For the right reasons. The villain loses power quietly. Not because someone hurt him. Not because fists were thrown or threats made. He loses power because his control depended on shadows. On isolation. On people doubting their own instincts. On everyone believing it was safer not to get involved. Now people are involved. Eyes are open. Names are written down. Questions are answered. Light has a way of shrinking things that thrive in darkness. Victoria begins to change. Not overnight. Not magically. But in ways that matter. She stops flinching when someone raises their voice across the room. She stops apologizing for accidents that aren't her fault. She starts asking questions, real ones. Why do engines sound different? How do locks work? Can I help? Pete notices she doesn't ask permission for every breath anymore. He notices she argues small arguments, harmless ones. She pushes back when she doesn't agree. She pouts when she loses at cards. She complains when her toast is burnt. Normal kid stuff. Healing doesn't erase scars, but it gives them context. Pete carries his own scars too. They don't vanish just because the danger is gone. He still checks exits without thinking. Still positions himself between Victoria and strangers. Still feels his chest tighten when voices get sharp. But he's learning something new. He doesn't have to be the only one watching anymore. There are others now. People who take turns. People who stay up, so he doesn't have to. People who notice when he's exhausted and tell him to rest. Family doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up and stays. One evening, as the light fades again, Pete stands near the door, staring out at the quiet street. Old habits tug at him, whispering that danger always returns when you least expect it. Someone joins him. Door's locked, the biker says casually. Pete nods. I know. We'll keep it that way. Pete hesitates. You don't have to. The biker shrugs. We choose to. That's the difference.
Choice.
Protection given freely, not enforced. Safety built intentionally, not demanded. It all started with a knock. A knock most people would never answer. A knock that could have been ignored, dismissed, rationalized away. But someone answered. And because they did, fear lost its monopoly. Victoria curls up on the couch that night with a book, not clutched like armor anymore, but resting open on her chest. She falls asleep mid-page, mouth slightly open, breathing slow and even. Pete tucks the blanket around her. He pauses, looking at her face. Peace doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet. He turns off the light. The door stays locked, for the right reasons. And somewhere, far from here, the villain realizes something has changed. He can't control what people refuse to hide. He can't rule spaces filled with witnesses. He can't survive where light lives. The night ends. Not perfectly. Not painlessly. But meaningfully. Comment, I stand with the kids if you believe protecting the vulnerable is everyone's responsibility. Subscribe for more true stories where ordinary people choose courage over comfort. Stay with us. More stories like this are coming, and every one of them matters.